Welcome to our monthly support group meeting. I'll let our Executive Vice President move forward. Thank you.
Let me introduce our speaker. We are very, very lucky today. We have one of our region's most leading experts on diet and nutrition. Her name is Kristen McGill. She received her bachelor's in Nutritional Sciences from Penn State University. And then she, which also is where she did her dietetic internship. And then she has her master's of science in food nutrition from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. She is board certified in obesity and waste management. Her career paths have included working as a clinical dietitian, long-term care bariatrics, and now she is in retail with Giant Foods. So she is always on the hunt for a food adventure, whether it be a new restaurant or a new type of cuisine to try. And in her spare time, she enjoys painting, drawing, and soaking up everything that the DC scenery has to offer. So the floor is yours, Kristen. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate everybody inviting me here today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Real quick, just want to say that I would love to interact with you a little bit more at the end of this show, or end of this presentation. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat box, and I will try to get to as many as I can with our time here. So we're going to be talking about holiday eating strategies. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, especially because it's the time of year that people start worrying about how to stay healthy, how to avoid that holiday weight gain. So let's go ahead and dive into what we have on the docket for today. Normally, we break our presentations down into 3 separate sections. In the office, which is not the literal office because this is looking different for everybody these days. This is really the science. This is the data behind, what is that holiday eating mentality? Then we're going to head to my favorite section, the aisles, where we're going to talk about products, but we're also going to go over some label reading. I think that trips a lot of people up when they're trying to make those healthy choices in the grocery store. How do I understand the label? What do these numbers mean? So we're going to actually discuss that today. And then lastly, we're going to tie it all together in the kitchen. How can we make the most of our holiday meal and just day-to-day meal planning and meal prepping, all that really good stuff. All right, so in the office, not the literal office, this is really just the science. This is kind of the evidence, or we're just going to talk about what that holiday eating mentality is. All right, so there are many factors that will play a role in holiday weight gain. So for one, you've got the feel-good factor. We've heard of that term comfort food. There's a reason for that. Gives us that source of comfort, especially if we're feeling that stress and that uncertainty. So there's a reason for that. Plus everything that we're familiar with during the Thanksgiving and holiday season, mashed potatoes, stuffing, sweet potatoes, all of that, it can be very, very comforting. The other one is that only once in a year mentality. And that makes sense because a lot of these foods, they do only come around this time of year. We don't really hear about turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing during summertime. No offense to anybody who does that. That's totally fine. But this is kind of the time of year where people get it out of their systems, or they look forward to their eggnog, or maybe that sweet potato pie or stuffing. So it totally makes sense. You want to get it out of your system because it won't be another year until you see those favorite foods resurface. Then you have sentimental value. So think about some of your favorite dishes that, you might have a little more nostalgic feeling towards, maybe grandma's stuffing, or, maybe there's some type of family recipe that's been passed down generation after generation. It seems like generation, actually it's probably decades after decades. I know I've got some special recipes like that in my family. So anyway, yeah, I think about certain recipes and they go beyond just that sentimental value. It's more just like, this is kind of like the defining dish for all of our holidays. So anyway, something that I hold very near and dear to my heart. All right. The other thing is you want to have manners. You don't want to be rude, of course. It can be hard to turn down someone's special dish that they not only made, but, maybe they're pressuring you. Hey, have some more, have some seconds. I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I know my family definitely does that. They'll say, eat up. There's a lot of lovely hands that put these meals together, or put these dishes together. So of course, you do sometimes find yourself maybe pushing yourself, stuffing yourself a little bit more, just because you don't want to, you don't want to seem rude. All right. And then lastly, we have the whole diet starts tomorrow mentality, or the food funeral, as I say, or last supper. And I try to tell people to stay away from that, just because it kind of goes into that black and white area of thinking that plagues so many of us when it comes to our eating habits. So if you have a little more of an indulgent meal, that doesn't mean the rest of your day is a wash. And the same thing happens for an indulgent day. You know, let's say, for instance, you're really diligent, you're really good throughout the week. And of course, holidays, it's just a day where, yeah, maybe you're going to deviate, you know, indulge, you know, and so you shouldn't necessarily have those feelings of guilt, because that's what I try to tell people. The mentality should be, it's just one day. Everything else around it can be a work in progress. So let's talk about that holiday weight gain, though, because there are some interesting statistics. So the average American weight, the average American's weight begins to rise around Halloween and peaks about 10 days after Christmas. So the good news is that most average weight gain is anywhere between 1 to 2 pounds. Now, I know some people are different. They might say, oh no, I've definitely put on at least 5 pounds. And everyone's going to be different, but it kind of goes to show that it's not as much as one may think, or what the average reported weight gain is. And of course, the media tends to report stuff that's much higher, such as that 10-pound weight gain. So anyway, if we're looking at those numbers and we say, oh, it's only about 1 to 2 pounds, that's the average, this can still be a little problematic. So I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. So let's say, for instance, 1 year you only put on 2 pounds. That's totally fine. It's not a huge weight difference, but it's harder for our bodies to take that weight off. I would say that how it comes on is much easier than how it comes off. So let's say, for instance, that 2-pound weight gain goes nowhere. It's fine. Then the following year, you put on another 2 pounds. Then the following year, you put on another 2 pounds without it going anywhere. So over the course of, 10 years, you probably put on at least, 10 to 20 pounds. So it can actually be pretty significant. So I said all that to say that, when we put on weight and as we age, so a 10-pound weight gain in our 40s and then in our 50s and then even in our 60s, suddenly our risk for chronic disease is going to go up high. So as we age, our risk for disease goes up as is, but then you add weight, unwanted weight gain into the mix, it just kind of adds fuel to the flame. So that's why we do want to pay attention to that. Now, I'm not saying that we need to really get into this whole counting calories or feeling like we have to restrict our eating. We can just make those smarter strategies, which we will cover here in just a minute. But another interesting statistic is how many calories, what's the average consumption in that holiday dinner? It's about 4,000 calories. That's a lot. The biggest culprits coming from pecan pie. And again, I'm not calling these out because I don't love them myself. It's just they can be really, really high in calories. Stuffing, mashed potatoes, depending if you're making them with, sour cream or whole milk. But that's a lot. It adds up pretty quickly. Plus, I'll get to the fun stuff. We'll talk about alcohol here in just a second. But what would that look like if we had to burn 4,000 calories? Well, it would look like this. We would have to engage in 4 hours of cardio, 4 hours of weightlifting or load-bearing exercise, and then 4 hours of yard work, all in sequence, okay? Not just split up. It would have to be 4 and 4 and 4. So that's 12 hours total of physical activity just for a 30-minute meal. Isn't that kind of interesting? Now, and by the way, I'm not encouraging that we all go out and try to burn 4,000 calories. In fact, it's very, very unrealistic that we could do that in a day. But that kind of goes back to my point that how it comes on is so much easier than how it comes off. So what can we do? Well, first and foremost, we can focus on weight maintenance versus weight loss during the holidays. Sometimes people just focus solely on the scale, and if they don't see their weight moving, they get really frustrated. But actually, I tell them weight maintenance is just as successful as weight loss. So maintenance of your present weight is a big enough challenge, especially during the holidays. So it's no small feat. So don't look at it as a failure or don't look at it as it not being good enough because it's actually just as successful as weight loss. Now, remember, there's only 2 major holidays that we typically indulge in between November and New Year's, and that's Thanksgiving. There's 3. You've got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas, if that's something that you celebrate, or maybe some holiday that, involves quite a few, a lot of meals, a lot of food. And then you have a New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. So that's 3 out of basically the 60 days that are not holidays. So keep that in mind. You've got a chance to work around those days towards your goals. All right. So the other thing is that I would say, it doesn't necessarily have to be all about the food. You can start developing a healthy exercise routine. I know this is a very big challenge for a lot of people, especially this time of year, because it's colder, it gets darker so quickly. So, the food aside, how are we going to stay active? Everyone's kind of got their own strategy. I know for me, this is my time to thrive. While I do, I don't like the cold, and I don't like I shouldn't say I don't like the cold. I actually don't mind the cold. I don't like how dark it gets. So I had to kind of rearrange my schedule to make sure that, yes, I can get in some physical activity because I like to be outdoors. I think about the summertime. I'm the total opposite. I don't like the heat and humidity and the sun rays. So I actually really like being out this time of year. So anyway, said all that to say that my exercise, I have to do some reconfiguring so I can get it in before it gets too dark out. So anyway, but that is a good goal of mine. I understand there's other ways of getting an exercise. There's gyms, there's, indoor swimming. You can do a bunch of stuff indoors. However, I'm somebody where I like to take advantage of the cooler, more tolerable weather, in my opinion. Okay. So the other thing I would say is that plan on not dieting after the new year. This kind of sounds a little bit foreign because when we hear New Year's resolutions, we automatically think, oh, diet, time to, get healthy and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens, what happens is that there's that anticipation of food restriction that kind of sets you up for that binge-like behavior, especially over the holidays. So for example, I hear it all the time. People will say, well, I need to get all my sweets in now because after New Year's, I'm not going to have any sugar. Or, well, I need to enjoy my carbs while I can because after that, no carbohydrates allowed. So, again, having that black or white mentality, having that restrictive outlook on it can actually be more detrimental than successful. So, and there's more to come with that here in the next upcoming slides. So here are just a few, holiday eating strategies. Keep your schedule. Our bodies like routine. Our bodies like predictability. So in addition to that, set up an eating plan if you can. I know with the stress and I know with the chaos with holidays, sometimes we're more likely to skip meals. Sometimes we're, eating large meals here, small meals there. And it's part of being human. So if you have a day like that, don't beat yourself up, but try as much as you can to stick to a routine. Keep in mind too, that exercise plan is also really important. And then here's another one, sleep. Sleep spills over into so many different facets of our life, such as stress and, our food choices during the day, especially if we experience those cravings, can compromise our immunity. This is the time of year where we do want to pay more attention to our keeping a healthy immune system. So I said all that to say that, again, have an eating plan, a healthy eating plan, an exercise plan, and a sleep schedule is really going to set yourself up for success. The other thing I want to talk about are those sneaky calories that can contribute during the holidays. So if you are the cook in the house, you're the one that's doing most of the baking, of course you want to sample your food. You want to make sure it tastes good for your guests or your family. But sometimes that can be a source of sneaky calories. If you're in the kitchen, maybe you're nibbling here, you're sampling there. I'm not saying that you can't do that, but just that's why we get that term sneaky calories, because we're not paying attention to them. And they do add up. Cleaning up after dinner. So leftovers are out, or maybe, before you're putting stuff away, you might be kind of getting a few last little tastes. I know I do that for sure. Anytime I clean up the kitchen, I'm kind of getting the last minute bites in. Dishing up dessert. So if you're, licking the serving spoon, or maybe you're going for, a couple little extra bites, because it tastes good, all of that adds up. And then here's the biggest one, alcohol. Alcohol is a big source of empty calories. I will talk to you here in just a minute about that, but I tend to tell people, our bodies do not register, our brain does not register those empty calories, especially from alcohol. So you're not going to feel full, and you could down several hundred calories in alcohol spread out through the day. I know that's what a lot of families do. It's part of their celebration, but you're never going to feel that fullness. But you definitely have given yourself empty calories, no nutritive value, and it just takes your body more to burn that up. So, All right, the other thing is don't be too hard on yourself. Remember, it matters more what you do most of the time versus what you do some of the time. So if most of the time you're getting in, healthy food choices, or you're staying hydrated on things that are not alcohol related, or, you are getting in that good old exercise, all that stuff really matters. So don't beat yourself up if you have a couple off days, or you have a couple days where you're like, you know what, I'm going to take a day for myself and I'm going to eat what I want. I'm going to enjoy it. And then I'll get back at it tomorrow. All right. So the other thing is try to practice more mindfulness, especially this time of year. Eat more mindfully, enjoy those flavors. I know, again, it kind of goes back to those foods that resurface this time of year. I love all those earthy spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. Any kind of dish that calls for cinnamon, I'm all about. Love sweet potatoes, all of those foods that you really enjoy. Make sure that you are taking time to savor those flavors. All right, let's see what else. All right, so planning for the new year, I do want to talk about this. Most people are unable to stick to their New Year's resolutions just because they're setting unrealistic goals for themselves. So yes, diet is important, especially if you want to do a diet reset, or maybe exercise is too. But, maybe this year's a year where you don't want to focus on that. Maybe you want to, focus on something different, managing your stress, or getting in that good sleep. There's all kinds of other things that are included with a healthy lifestyle that aren't necessarily always food and exercise related. So again, try to tell people don't have this all or nothing or this black and white mentality, because it kind of sets you up for success, especially if you have an off day. I hear this a lot during this time of year. I cheated, or I was bad. And so I try to tell people, don't look at it like that, because there's always going to be another meal. All right, that you can just do better on. So we will eat again. So if you have a bad meal, it's okay, because you will eat again, and that just gives you another opportunity to make a better choice. So anyway, I could be here all day kind of giving these examples, but allow yourself time for mistakes. Build yourself that support system that keeps you on track with your goals, if you have a support system or have a game plan, because it's part of being human and we're not going to get it right every day. All right. So the other thing that you can do that is going to shift your focus when it comes to New Year's resolutions is, you can look at your overall health instead of weight. I know we tend to look at just that number on the scale or the size of, whatever our clothing is, but there are other things that you can focus on. For example, some people, they get healthy by quitting smoking. And that's a big goal that they have. I mentioned stress, that's something that's never going to go away for a lot of people. So managing your stress. Some people, they need to take some time for mental health and do some good things for themselves. So that is all part of a healthy lifestyle. It does not directly relate to weight. All right. The other thing is that, the other thing is if you are setting goals, make sure that you are specific. So if weight loss is a goal of yours, so for example, if you're like, no, I did gain 10 pounds and I would really like to see that come off. Even though that's a good goal, it's not specific enough. So yes, you want to lose those 10 pounds. How are you going to get there? What's that going to look like? Does that involve adding more fruits and vegetables to your day? Does that involve adding more exercise to your routine? Does that involve better portion control? So it's always good to have that specificity, there we go. That's a strange word for me sometimes. It's always good to have that as part of your goal plan. And there's nothing wrong with starting small. So I always tell people, what's realistic for you. If you can't set an exercise goal every single day, like the exercise recommendations are, be realistic. Can you give 3 days a week? Yeah, that's a lot better for me than 5 days a week. Or for some people, 2 days is all they can give. And that is okay. Reevaluate, check in with yourself. Goals can always be tweaked and tailored based on your lifestyle and based on the feasibility of that. All right. And the other thing that I would say is that, one of the most common obstacles people state for living a healthier lifestyle is the time shortage. And I totally understand that. So, one of the things that I would say is that try to carve out more time for yourself. It's okay to say no. And it depends what demands you're facing, but it's okay to put your needs first if it really helps you reach your goals. So, there's nothing wrong with a little self-care, as we say. There's nothing wrong with kind of, again, looking at, okay, what do I need to do to get to my goals and how am I going to get there? All right. And then lastly, for instance, with our relationship of food, I tell people try focusing on things that, you should not, or focus on things that, you should benefit or you would benefit from having less of, such as sweets, refined carbohydrates, but I wouldn't say eliminate it altogether, because when you do that, guess what? That's all your brain's going to think about. I hear this happen all the time. People say, okay, no more chocolate. That's all. I'm not going to have any more chocolate. Second, you tell yourself, I can't have any more chocolate, you're going to start thinking about chocolate day in and day out. So we don't really encourage that for sure. But focus on things that maybe you can add, not take away. That's one of our favorite things that we love to tell our customers. It's very surprising that they hear, oh, a dietitian's telling me to add. But think about ways you can add more fruits and vegetables. How can you add that exercise? How can you add better hydration? Of course, there are some things that you could get less of, but I do find that that's refreshing for a lot of people to hear that we are not the food police. We're not judgment people. We're just trying to tell you, how can you be a little bit healthier? And much of the time, it involves adding things that are just better for you. All right, so hopefully that helps with the holiday eating strategies and the mentality, but let's head to the aisles. This is my favorite thing to talk about, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So I want to revisit label reading, and I think most people understand how to read a label, but there might be some cool tidbits that you didn't know. So I'm going to walk you through a food label that you would typically find at the grocery store, because I'm sure you found, yourself asking a question, are the ingredients really in here that they're telling me? What's a GMO? Is this something I should be alarmed about? So the beauty about being consumers is that you get to make those decisions yourself, and knowledge is power. So the more you know, the more informed your decisions are going to be. And again, in the presence of an all foods fits dietitian, of course, I'm not going to say put it back on the shelf or no, you can't have that. We believe every food will have its place. It just depends on the frequency and how you fill your plate. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through this slide together. So when you're picking up a label, first thing you want to check out is the serving size, which I tell people, nice and bold there that you can see. You can take it a step further and see how many servings is in the whole container or the whole box. This is a super easy one. There are 2 1-cup servings, so 2 cups pretty much. I do appreciate how a lot of products, not every single one of them, but a lot of products will have dual columns. So if you stick to the serving size, that 1 cup, everything that you see down there in the middle, it's pretty straightforward. But if you're super, super hungry and you eat the entire thing, I always tell people, you just double everything. You double the calories, you double the sodium, you double the fat. So once again, it does help incentivize portion control. Falls perfectly in line with what we're talking about with holiday eating. Calories, pretty easy to find. This isn't enough. So we have to kind of take a deep dive into, calories and, again, all foods fit, but, it just, we don't know enough just based on the calories alone. So moving along down, total fat. Total fat is what you do want to pay attention to, because it includes all of it. It's going to include the mono and the polyunsaturated fats. It's going to include saturated and trans fats. So in this case, we have total fat is 5 grams. This is what trips people up, because then they start asking, well, it seems like a low number, but is it too low or is it high? I don't know. So that's where that percent DV column, I don't know if you can see my cursor over it, but that percent DV column comes in super handy. Percent DV means percent daily value. And the daily value is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. But here's a little disclaimer. Not everybody needs a 2,000 calorie diet. I don't know, for whatever reason, the USDA, the FDA, they settled on a nice clean number of 2,000, but just keep in mind that the general public needs a lot less than that, probably about like 1,500, 1,200. Everybody is different. So there's no blanket recommendation, but this still serves as a very helpful guide. Okay, so what this tells us is that in this 1 cup serving, we have 5 grams of fat. If you look at that percent daily value, that's 6% of our daily fat recommendations based on a 2,000 calorie diet. I'll say that one more time because it is kind of a mouthful. And the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa, what's going on? So that just means that 6% of our whole day's recommendations of fat are coming from this product, and that's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So it doesn't seem like much, 6%. And you're right, it's not. But here's another trick of the trade. This is my favorite thing to talk about. 5% and the 20% rule. So anytime you see a product that is 5% the daily value and below, the product is low in whatever nutrient you're looking at. Anytime you see a product or you see an item that is 20% the daily value and above, the product is high in whatever nutrient it is. It could be a good or bad thing. So now where does that leave all those numbers in between? And that's right. You're not going to hit these perfect numbers when you're shopping in the store. But again, when we have these reference numbers, it just gives consumers confidence. So they get to make their own informed decisions. So let's use the 5% and the 20% rule, as we continue moving down this food label. So total fat, it's 5 grams, that's 6%, that daily value. Remember, 5% below, it's low, 20% and above, it's high. We're not at 5%, but we are so dang close. I would say this is a low fat product. Now, what you can do, and what I do recommend you do, is then ask yourself, where's this fat coming from? Even though there's 5 grams of fat, how much is coming from saturated fat and whatnot? So in this case, you have, look down below, you see saturated fat, there's 2 grams. So that just means that 2 out of these 5 grams are coming from saturated fat. Looking at that percent daily value, it's 10%. So here's where it's a little tricky. It's not 5% and below. It's definitely not 20% and above. It's right there in the middle. But considering 5 grams of fat, we already determined this is pretty low fat. Doesn't mean that there's a ton of saturated fat coming from this product because the fat was already pretty low to begin with. But here's where, again, we can look at that 20% rule. If you go over to the far right side of this column, let's say you were super hungry, like I said, and you ate the whole thing. Remember what I said, you double everything, double calories, double sodium. In this case, saturated fat, where we have 2 grams. If we stick to the portion or the serving size, if we double that, now we have 4 grams of saturated fat. Aha, that's 20%. So we had something that was pretty respectable with the saturated fat. Now, if we ate the entire thing, now we have something that we just consumed that's high in saturated fat because we have that 20% and above. So again, it just helps incentivize portion control. All right, let's look at total cholesterol. I don't have an arrow pointing there, but if you look there, cholesterol is 15 milligrams. And looky here, we hit that magic number of 5%. So what does this tell us? If it's 5% below, it's low. This is a low cholesterol product. Cool. All right, what about sodium? This trips a lot of people up, and I know I'm speaking to people where cardiovascular health is front of mind. Actually, it should be based on the American Heart Association, the Dietary Guidelines, American Cancer Society. They're all kind of saying the same thing. We should really lower sodium in our diet. So it's very overwhelming when you're shopping in the store because people have come to me and they've said, there's sodium in everything, which yes, there's a sodium in quite a bit, but when you know these numbers, then you make a better decision. So in this case, we have 240 milligrams of sodium in this 1 cup serving. Looking at that percent daily value, it's 10% of our whole day's worth of sodium coming from this product. So looking at the 5% rule, the 20% rule, we're kind of in the middle, kind of not. But if you are looking for that absolute magic number for sodium, anytime you find something that is 140 milligrams or less, the product is low in sodium. If you really want to hit that magic number, we have something that's 240. So we're 100 milligrams over. Honestly, at the end of the day, that's not going to make or break your blood pressure. I tend to be a little more, flexible, a little more lenient sometimes with my food assessment, because again, when you're shopping in the store, you're not going to hit magic numbers. I'll tell a quick story that, years ago, I had a customer. She was so upset because she was in the produce section and she found that celery had sodium in it. Celery comes from the ground. She's like, how can this be? And I was telling her, well, it's natural sodium, not like the farmer, anybody's adding sodium to it. It's just natural. But she was so upset about that. So I told her about, anything that's 140 milligrams of sodium or less is low in sodium. And celery, I don't know if anybody knew this off the top of their head, celery has 80 milligrams per serving. So obviously, 140 and below is low. So if you have something that's 80 milligrams, it's low in sodium. So nothing to be alarmed about, but the moral of the story is that she was still very, very upset, and I could not talk her off the ledge. It was, yeah, she was very, very discouraged about that. But anyway, I just say that because don't be surprised. Yeah, when you're shopping and you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this had sodium. When you know these numbers, then you can make a better, more accurate, assessment. Biggest culprits of sodium that we can find, shouldn't be surprising, are going to be processed foods, convenience meals, a lot of those microwavable dinners, entrees, snacking items. But I've found quite a few out there nowadays that they've actually come a long way. Lower sodium, less preservatives, less additives. So I have seen that. So again, it's kind of nice to know there's something for everybody. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, that even if something on this label was really high in fat, really high in sodium, doesn't mean that you have to write off your day. Maybe you could just do better at the next meal, or keep that in context with your whole day. All right. So, I don't know if somebody has a question out there. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kristen, real quick.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to stop you, but so can you share the name of this actual product? Because it just it's good to relate the label to what you're actually talking about. So then we can visualize it. So what is this for?
I actually don't know what it is. It's just a label, but I have an idea. I think I have an idea.
Okay.
I think that's kind of nice because I'll break it down. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm guessing it's a cereal. I'll give you a little preview because of the ingredient list, which we'll cover here in just a second. But yeah, I guess it keeps us all on our toes. We don't know what it is. So, okay. All right, so that's the thing with sodium, and you get, again, looking over that right side of the column, you eat the whole thing, you double the sodium. So what was something that was kind of respectable with the sodium intake or sodium level, you eat the whole thing, you double the sodium. Now it is truly high in sodium because now it's 21%. Total carbohydrates, I want to talk about this because a lot of times people are watching their carbs, totally understandable, but you do want to look at total carbohydrates. Sometimes we go straight for the added sugar. Sometimes we go straight for something else, but total includes it all. It's going to include the natural occurring carbohydrates. It's going to include any dietary fiber as well as added sugars. So we do want to look at that. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time with this because I tread these waters very, very carefully. There's no standard recommendation for total carbs in a day, and that's echoed by the American Diabetes Association. And everybody's different, depends on your age, your activity level, your gender, all that stuff. So I'm just going to say duly noted if it's something that you are worried about, if you have prediabetes or diabetes. But it is important to see, okay, of these total carbohydrates, what else is included in this? That's why dietary fiber is super important. Fiber is our friend, makes us feel fuller, longer. In terms of heart health, it binds that LDL, that bad cholesterol, helps eliminate it through our bodies a lot better. So dietary fiber is great. So in this case, we have 6 grams of fiber in this product. And looky here, aha, that percent daily value column, we have 21%. This is high in fiber. So far, I'm loving what I hear. I hear low fat, I'm going to round down, low in total fat, low in cholesterol, high fiber. These are good things. All right. So the only thing I wanted to point out too, or the other thing is that net carbs, be mindful that a lot of products out there on the shelves will say, net carbs or low in net carbs. The American Diabetes Association does not recognize that. I think it's more of a marketing gimmick where it used to be years ago, people would just subtract. Whatever carbs they saw, whatever fiber they saw, they would just subtract it. There's no set standard for that. ADA has put in tons of research and found that is not, it's kind of arbitrary. So anyway, just want to say, watch out for that. I talked about fiber, I talked about added sugar. Oh, real quick, let me go back. No, never mind. I don't want to touch it because I don't want to mess up my slides. But anyway, if you look at added sugar, it is important to look at that. All it means is that the company has added more sugar, probably just to make it taste a little bit better. In this case, we have 4 grams. So if you go over to that percent daily value, it's 8%. We're not anywhere near 20%. Yeah, we're not at 5%, but rounding, I would say, yeah, it's pretty low. It's pretty respectable with the added sugar. Okay, protein, looking there, we got 9 grams of protein, even though there's not a percent daily value. We did have some decent fiber. So we had 21%, 6 grams of fiber. Anytime you can closely match or kind of even the scale with protein and fiber, you have almost equal parts, you're good. In fact, we have more protein here. So we got good fiber, we got good protein. Those two work together to give us that feeling of satiety and fullness. So I would say here we are doing really good things with this product. Lastly, the ingredient list. And I do want to touch on that. Sam had a really good question about, well, what is this product? We don't even know. So yes, this ingredient list is my favorite thing to talk about because without us even knowing what the product is, I think it gives us a good indication. By the way, you never have to worry about ingredients not being fully listed on the label. That would be illegal. There would be lawsuits for that. So if you are thinking, well, what else are they throwing in here that I can't see? That's not allowed. So I just like to give people that peace of mind. I know there is a lot of mistrust in our food system. We hear a lot of sensationalized headlines, but rest assured, it is a very regulated system. So any type of deviation from the law would, be absolutely detrimental for a company. They don't want to do that. They don't want to lose their business. So anyway, ingredient list. The first thing that you see is what the product is mostly made up of. Then every other ingredient is going to be listed in descending order. So I tell people the first, if you're wondering, well, what's going in this product, look at the first 3 or 4 ingredients. That's what the product is mostly made up of. So in this case, first ingredient is whole grain. What do we know about whole grains? They're really good for us. They got nutrients, they got fiber, they're good for us. And we can ask ourselves, does this make sense based on the label? Well, it does, because there was low cholesterol, there's high fiber, there's also good protein. That's consistent with what we know to be true of whole grains. Second ingredient was canola oil. Did we see total fat? Yes, of course. Now it's a plant oil. So we still have some mono and polyunsaturated fats, a little bit of saturated fat, but nothing to be alarmed about. I won't go through every single ingredient, but if we skip over rice flour, corn syrup, did we see some added sugar in this product? Yeah, we did, but not a lot. In fact, that's why it's not front and center, because it's listed in descending order. So looking at this, like I said, I don't know what the product is, but if I had to guess, I'm assuming it's probably a cereal. Maybe, yeah, I'm thinking it's probably a cereal. But that's why when people come to me and they say, well, what's in a veggie burger? Are there really vegetables? I'll tell them, look at the ingredient list. Certain varieties do reflect more veggie-like items, such as mushrooms and onions and carrots. And then some I see, they have a lot of soy. Not to say it's not a veggie, it's coming from a plant. So it's still vegetable, it's plant-based, but sometimes you see wheat fillers and other things like that. So again, all the questions that you have remaining from the food label will be echoed or supported in the ingredient list. All right. So I hope that helps give some people a better context of how to read a food label. I know this really, went miles for me because even as a dietitian and before I came to work for Giant, I had a lot of questions about, the food and our choices and all that good stuff. So anyway, I like sharing this with everybody.
Kristen, can I ask a question about that?
Of course. Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up, but yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go back to it.
Yes.
Something I've often wondered, if I see the word total fat in bold, and then all of a sudden I see an indented item, it would indicate that these are types of fats.
Yes.
And if the total fat is 5 grams, saturated fat is 2 grams, where's the other 3 missing grams? Now, maybe I don't get it. Then there's 6% is the percentage of daily value. And the first 10%, that's larger than 6. And there's no value, and why does it seem confusing?
Yes, and you're right. So yeah, it's not going to list the other other sources of fat. So that just leads me to believe that you're right. There's a missing 3 grams. Where are those coming from? They're going to be coming from the mono and polyunsaturated fats. It's not listed there. However, I have seen some products where they will truly break it down. They'll show you how much saturated fat, how many poly, how many mono. And I don't know why some have it and some do not, but that just lets us know that the other remaining, and the percentages aren't going to add up to be 100%. It just shows you the whole day's recommendations. So for example, that 2 grams of saturated fat that you're seeing contributes to 10% of our whole day's worth or whole day recommendations or whole day's recommendations, there we go, of saturated fat based on a 2,000 calorie diet. I don't know if that answers your question. The other thing I do want to mention too is the trans fats. I did skip over that part, but trans fats have been banned in our country as of 2015, but we can still find them in our food system. There's a little bit of a nuance. So in this case, you have trans fats. Now, why they were banned is because of how they convert in our body. So something on the ingredient list, it's not going to say trans fat. It might say the word partially hydrogenated or fully hydrogenated. And anytime you see those words, it means it's going to get converted into a trans fat in our bodies. They are very bad for us. And the reason why they were banned is because they have detrimental impact on cardiovascular health. Now, the reason why there's a nuance or why they still exist in our food system is that a lot of products, they do not exceed 2%. So for example, trans fat has 0 grams, but notice how there's no percent after that, and that's why some companies or some products, it'll say 0 trans fats on the label, but that's why you want to check the ingredient list, because like I said, anytime you see the word partially hydrogenated or fully hydrogenated, it means that there's still trans fats. It just has not exceeded that 2%. Now, does that mean the product is terrible for us? No, we just want to be aware of that. And the biggest culprits of products that you would expect to find a little bit of trans fats are going to be in those processed foods. So for example, frozen pies, frozen pie doughs, pie crusts, a lot of processed, I'm trying to think, frozen dinners. Some coffee creamers out there will have hydrogenated. Margarine for a while was using partially hydrogenated or fully hydrogenated soybean oil. So again, I just like to say that because you're right. And in this case, we can check the ingredient list, which we just did here, whole grain, rice flour. We don't see anything hydrogenated. So we're good. That truly means, yes, there's no trans fats and all that good stuff. So yeah, we know that, yes, the remaining 3 grams are going to be coming from mono and polyunsaturated fats. I hope that answered your question. This is your daily recommendation of saturated fat. This is the recommendation of added sugars and all that all that good stuff. So all this is saying is that based on whatever we're allotted each day for saturated fat, this product is giving us 10% of our whole day.
All right, Sam might have a question too. His hand up.
Yeah. 2 points. So looks like this product might have some animal fat in it. I'm not sure if it's cereal or not, but glycerin could have animal fat. Is that right?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it is. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
It might be. Yeah, it might be a preservative. But we did see some saturated fat, and most of the time saturated fat does come from an animal. So right. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the total carb, for diabetics and stuff, that's super key, right? Because all carbs break down to sugars in the body. And when we're tracking those, you can see the.
Correct.
So just wanted to make that point.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And I didn't mean to dismiss that because it's very helpful for people who are counting carbohydrates. I just don't like to spend too much time on it because I've had it happen before. People are like, well, how many should I have? And what should I do about this? And it becomes so specific to that individual that's why I'm kind of like, hey, if you count it, it's great. It's a super, super helpful tool. But like I said, I just kind of breeze through it because
it's different for everyone too. I get it because, for me, high blood pressure, I'm going to look at the sodium line. And, when you look for products with low sodium, suddenly you see it's higher on sugar. So it's a very difficult balance sometimes. I'm just
for sure. Yeah. Nope. You're right. Yeah. And I appreciate, the feedback that, what you're looking for and everything. And sometimes, you see something that's respectable in sodium, but it might be high in the sugars and all that kind of stuff. So but I appreciate you weighing in on that. So, okay. So I want to talk real quickly about 2 unique navigation tools that you can find in the aisles of Giant. It's very specific to Giant. We have Best for Me, which is our Guiding Stars program. This is a nutrition rating system. A lot of people had no idea we had this here at the store. So let me explain this to you. Products are given stars on a good, better, and best merit 1 star means it's good for you nutritionally, 2 means it's better, 3 means it's the best. Now, what a product must do, or the criteria that must be met in order for a star to be given, is going to be based on credits and debits. So a product might be credited because it has more ingredients that we should get more of in our diet, like more fiber and more B vitamins and more omega-3s. Products might also be given a star because there are debits against ingredients we need less of, less saturated fat, less sodium, less added sugar. So this is pretty cool because it takes the guesswork out of consumers trying to look at the label. I mean, you can now that we know how to do that, but if you're ever seeing a star at the store and you're like, oh, I know what this means. It's good for me, or it's better, or it's the best. What I love also about guiding stars is it's visible all throughout the aisles of Giant, which does help debunk that myth that, oh, the center aisles, that's where all the junk is. Stay away from that. Funny story for you. I was just at my neighborhood Giant, and on the perimeter, the outside, I saw donuts, I saw chips, I saw some unhealthy things. So it does help debunk that myth that we shouldn't, shop the center aisles and only stick to the perimeter. Now, if you're somebody out there where you're like, I never have seen this in the store, you're not wrong. It's kind of hard to find. It's right by the price tag, which we already know where to find that, at the bottom right-hand corner. Sometimes you just easily overlook that. Plus, not to mention, it's going through a logo change. Right now, it might look like a little running figure with a star above the head, or an apple. Right now, they're kind of in transition. I tell people at the end of the day, if you see a star, it means it's nutrition related. So it's pretty cool. And that's my challenge for some of you. If you go to your neighborhood Giant next time, be on the lookout for these stars, because like I said, it's a shortcut. It's just a cool way to say, oh, it must be better for me. I have found potato chips that have guiding stars. How cool is that? I have found in the dairy aisle that there are guiding stars. A lot of people think, oh, there's nothing but sugar in the dairy aisle. So it just lets you know that in every single section, in every category at the store, there are better for you options thanks to guiding stars. Like I said, it's only unique to Giant, so you're going to find that at other retailers. Okay, best for we is our impact rating powered by our friends at How Good. This is not a nutrition rating system. It literally rates how good the product is for the planet. So I just want to differentiate the two. Sometimes when we see leaves, especially at restaurants, I've seen them on menus where I see a leaf and I'm like, oh, it's vegan or vegetarian. Not the case at the store. It just rates how good the product is on a social and environmental level. And similar to guiding stars, there's criteria that must be met. Degree of processing, minimal use of herbicides, pesticides, humane treatment towards animals, all that good stuff. So it's best for we, AKA best for our planet. So, all right, let's keep going because I'm almost running out of time. So just some healthy ingredient swaps for your next holiday dinner. I tread these waters also very carefully, because if you're in charge of the mac and cheese this year and you decide to swap it out, make it a little healthier, I don't know how the rest of the family is going to take that. Maybe they're on board, or maybe they're going to freak out because it doesn't taste the same. I know I've tried to do that with mac and cheese, make it healthier, and it's just not the same. So anyway, I just like to say, if it's going to ruin the family dynamic, don't do it. But there are a lot of recipes where you can swap out. You can make, an ingredient with plain non-fat Greek yogurt, because it has a very similar consistency as sour cream, but it has more protein. Again, we're adding protein, and less of that saturated fat. So that's a nice little swap. Cranberries, also really fun to kind of play around with, especially if you're doing the cranberry relish. Lots of fiber, lots of vitamin C, great for us nutritionally. Seltzer Waters, I'll talk to you real quickly here about mocktails and everything, but that's just a good way to get in your bubbly fix without all those extra calories. And then low sodium chicken broth, can sometimes be a nice little swap in place of cream sauces or canned cream soups, depending on the recipe. All right, let's tie it all together in the kitchen. I am going to cruise through this real quickly because I do want to get to some questions before we're completely out of time. Think the My Plate, half plate produce, quarter plate whole grains, the other quarter plate, that protein. That's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, give you all those wonderful nutrients too. If you're somebody where you're hosting the holidays, keep your guests in mind. Try to offer more vegetables, more fruits. I think your guests would also, your guests would really appreciate that if they see you're trying to be sensitive to those who might just be trying to be a little bit healthier this year. Offer healthier versions of the classics. Remember what I said, be careful with that mac and cheese topic or something else out there. But a lot of recipes, they can be vegified. So I've seen recipes for cauliflower mac and cheese or cauliflower bites. I've seen, healthier versions of pretty much spiralized zucchini noodles, all that kind of stuff that you can just kind of add more veggies, just a healthier take on the classics. The other thing you can do is instead of alcohol, you can also have mocktails where you're making fun, low calorie beverages. I'll show you that here in just a minute. But if you are somebody where you're setting up the buffet table, again, keep the My Plate in mind, where first thing that people are grabbing are going to be those good old fruits and veggies. Then they have an opportunity for lean protein and then grains. And this does work. I have been part of this where, first thing that we're grabbing is a big, wonderful, delicious salad. And, salad can easily fill up half a plate. So I've definitely appreciated when guests kind of rearrange their buffet table to kind of emulate the My Plate recommendations. So going back to those low calorie drinks, think about some fun, festive ways to just kind of jazz up the flavor, not adding a ton of calories. I love these little cranberry mocktails with a sprig of rosemary, I think, or maybe that's thyme. I've used them both. It's just kind of fun. It's really festive, but very, very low calorie. You can also offer unsweetened iced tea. Seltzer Waters totally having a moment right now. There's LaCroix, there's Waterloo, there's Bubbly, there's AHA. Oh my gosh, there's so many out there. So, find some that you enjoy, offer those flavor varieties. I think, again, guests will appreciate it. Good way to stay hydrated too. And then, of course, there's non-dairy alternatives. I've seen this nowadays where there's non-dairy eggnog, which obviously is going to be lower in saturated fat. You want to watch the sugar, of course, but I do appreciate that there's literally something out there for everybody now. All right, so bring on the veggies. If you're like, yeah, that's a good idea. I think I do want to offer vegify, a lot of those side dishes, but you have nowhere to start. You're not really sure. You can always head to Giant's recipe center. Well, I can throw it in the chat box here at the end. Don't let me forget. Actually, let me do it right now. recipecenter.giantfood.com. My all-time favorite place to go. You just type in mac and cheese, or you type in Brussels sprouts, or you type in whatever, and you're going to get lots of hits. So I really appreciate that. And if you see that a lot of these recipes are filtered with guiding stars. So instead of actively seeking out ingredients that have guiding stars, you can find entire recipes that meet that criteria. Remember, less saturated fat, more whole grains, more fiber, all that good stuff. So I hope I spelled Recipe Center okay. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Okay, cool. So Recipe Center is my go-to if I need some recipe inspiration. Also, the Savory Magazine is always free in store. They have a holiday issue every single year. This is not the cover. I think this was last year's or a couple years before, but I was actually searching the holiday recipe. They combine it November and December, and man, there are so many fun recipes. I cannot wait to try. And I love it. It's at the store. Our featured handpicked item of the month, the charcuterie boards, are kind of the latest rage these days, especially since, we're entertaining a little bit more. Everybody's kind of getting on board with, how to build a better board. So our two handpicked items of the month are Triscuits and California grapes. What our handpicked program is that we work with tons of vendors every day. And so we usually just like to do a vendor call out, something that they have that's, has guiding star criteria. Triscuits, I already know they're made with 100% whole grain. A lot of varieties are low sodium, so that's why they get their star ratings. California grapes, they're going to be those 3 stars. There's nothing being added. There's nothing being taken away. So, grapes, Triscuits are going to be perfect, have some cheese, whatever. So anyway, that's kind of our featured handpicked item throughout the rest of the year. And then we're going to be doing some other vendor call outs. But, if you need some inspiration, this is kind of, it's nice and very appropriate that these are 2 call out products for the remainder of the year. If you need additional resources or just something else to listen to, we have our Nutrition Made Easy podcast that you can head to our website and listen to. We have our very own episode on healthier holidays that you can just listen to. They're about 20 to 30 minute long episodes anyway. So if you're doing the dishes or you're outside getting your walk in, you can just listen to it there. It's just a nice little tidbit of information. And we have a ton of other topics too that you can check out. All right, that's about all the time that I have. I know I'm almost out of time, but I do want to thank you all for attending, and I'm going to stop my share and just dive right into the Q&A. Amy, I think you said you were probably going to facilitate the chat. By all means, if that's easiest for you. But yeah, I appreciate the questions, and if you have anything else, I'm happy to go over that before our time is up.
Okay, so Mark, I think Mark just told me in the chat he has 3 questions. So go ahead, Mark, unmute yourself and ask away, sir.
Thank you. Kristen, great presentation. Thank you for being here today.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Isn't it frustrating that most of the supermarkets are doing away with their natural food aisles and integrating the natural foods among all the other foods in the grocery store? That's the first question. The second question is, I was advised by a nutritionist to try to get down my A1C, which was 6.0, because she said it was borderline.
Yep.
She told me to use Ceylon cinnamon sprinkled on a cereal in the morning or something like that. I have been consistently down within 6 months to 5.4 just by doing that. Have you ever?
Yes, I'm writing your questions down so I can respond to them. Yes, go ahead.
Let me ask you the third question.
Okay.
Again, you don't really believe everything you read on the internet, but I read it 3 different places, and I really need to ask you this question because it's right on what we're talking about. And that is fresh fruits versus non-fresh fruits, or fresh fruits versus pie and ice cream. And basically what their argument is that fresh fruits can be bad for you, just like pie and ice cream, that it's the same type of sugar. And I do not believe that, but I would love to hear you have a comment on that. And those are my 3 questions.
Sure thing. Okay, so I'm just going to dive right into it. So the natural foods aisles, yes, is unique to Giant. You're not going to find that at other retailers. They blend it all together. The reason why Giant has a Nature's Promise section is because it's Giant's promise to its customers that you're going to find a really great product, and it's our free from line. So it is going to be free from a lot of common allergens like gluten and soy and milk and eggs. It's also going to be, a lot of it is organic. It's not all entirely organic. But yeah, it is kind of nice because that's where, you can find a lot of those better for you food choices in the Nature's Promise section. Also for those who have those allergies or intolerances. So yes, I do appreciate that Giant does have that specific section. You can also find Nature's Promise all throughout the store, but it is nice that there are 2 specialty aisles that you can just go right to whatever you're looking for. The A1C, congratulations on lowering that. That's fantastic. I am glad to hear that you dabbled with that cinnamon, because cinnamon has chromium in it. And studies have shown that chromium in cinnamon can actually help manage blood glucose better. So yeah, it makes sense that, you don't have those peaks, drops, and a little bit does go a long way. So it sounds like, yeah, just with that little inclusion, it has worked really well for you. And I'm sure other things too, exercise, making healthy food choices, all, play a role in it. But it is kind of cool that there's evidence out there for the connection between cinnamon and chromium and lowering blood sugar. Lastly, with the fresh fruits, frozen fruits, and all that stuff. So sugar is still sugar, which I agree with that whole, I know it's kind of disappointing. Our body's not going to know the difference. So, you are going to get something that's, maybe natural in sugar. It's going to get broken down like that. If you get something that's processed, it's still going to get broken down the same, still yields the same amount of calories. But with fruit, however, you're getting more. You're getting more nutrients, more vitamins, more minerals, more fiber. So even though it's breaking down as sugar, you're getting some other things tenfold back. Versus if you have a pie, you're really just getting a lot of sugar and fat too with that crust. So, and I would say too that you had touched on the frozen and the canned. We believe fresh, frozen, and canned, all of those still have wonderful nutrients. Just with the canned varieties, choose no salt, low sodium added, stuff that you guys already know. And then with canned fruit, just choose something that's lower in, packed in its own water or juice. So yeah, I was going to say that, salt is still salt in the body. The body is not going to know the difference. Same thing with sugar. It's still sugar in the body. It's not going to be able to differentiate, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at fruit as being a better for you option, which it is. You're absolutely right with that, as opposed to a pie. I hope that helps answer your question. But remember, all foods fit and in moderation. I hope that helps.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Kristen. Does anyone else have questions? I've got a few here in the chat, but does anybody else have anything they want to ask first? Go ahead, Sam. Unmute.
Sorry. So Kristen, so does Giant have any plans of having maybe one aisle for, diabetes is a huge problem, right? So one aisle for products that are highly recommended for diabetics, another aisle perhaps cardiac, the number one and number two killer. So, stuff like that. Any plans for that?
No, as far as I know, but it is something that is a trending thing. For example, in the prepared food section, we are looking at some of those convenience meals, like those dinners that kind of check off all the boxes. They're quick, they're easy, there's no meal prep involved, but they kind of meet that criteria for, yes, they're heart healthy or they're diabetes friendly. And I know some of the competitor retailers out there are kind of dabbling with that right now. We're connecting with some vendors to see when can we start carrying those products. But as far as aisles altogether or, stuff like that, we're not going to, I don't believe there are any plans with that, but that's why they have dietitians or nutritionists to help people identify, when you head down this aisle, you can definitely find some, more heart healthy options. Or when you head down this aisle, this is what to look for. It's how to read a label, which we covered and all that good stuff. So I will say the thing that Giant has going for it is that you have a team of licensed experts that can help you with that. Not every retailer does have dietitians. So that's what kind of helps us in our.
So are there people at the stores people can go and seek out?
Yeah, well, I was we're not physically in the stores, but we are all accessible virtually. And actually we have started to do more of a hybrid approach. Like, for example, I will go out to the community, protocols and everything like that followed. I have been asked to do some store tours. So we can, do a group of people, we keep it at six or less. And then we walk through the aisles and we talk about, again, better for you options and stuff like that. So we're doing more of a hybrid approach, but we don't have a nutritionist in each store. We just have one per district. And this is my district, Arlington, Alexandria. So I am your nearest neighborhood nutritionist. But if you find that somebody else on your team, on our team that you connect better with, by all means, that's the beauty of us being virtual, is that we're all accessible.
Right. I'm just glad I'm glad to hear that, because that might help people, because they do. Sure. People I've seen people confused, scratching their heads in front of while reading labels and stuff like that. But also the rating system we discussed. So is that for normal people or people with different ailments and stuff? You don't want people who have problems to go see, oh yeah, look, Giant said it's really good for you, and go buy it, and then you don't bother reading the labels.
Sure. I think I kind of know where you're getting at. Like, Guiding Stars does not give you a breakdown of how it earned its star. Now, I said it's a series of credits and debits, but that's why they it's completely science-based. I've met with their team because I had a ton of questions before. They also have a team of dietitians, but every category has its own algorithm. It's not going to be the same all across the board. So how they evaluate a snack item, it's going to have its own little algorithm that is going to be entirely different from a dairy item. But if we're talking snacks, they're obviously going to consider sodium. They're going to consider saturated fat, added sugar, things like that. If we're talking dairy, it's probably going to be the same thing. They're going to look at saturated fat, probably sodium too, but they might even look at added sugars, or if they find that there's more nutrients like more calcium, more vitamin D, that might earn the star. So I'm trying to think of other, I've even seen meat, a lot of meat items, they'll have stars versus not, because they're evaluating saturated fat and stuff like that. So the algorithms are different. But yes, I guess I would say that they kind of are all inclusive. If you are looking for, whether you're shopping for heart health or diabetes or weight management, it just lets you know this is a better for me option. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking there should be some sort of disclaimer, because it definitely is not a catch-all for all, so, and people could be misled thinking that they're getting the good stuff. I mean, I can see the other side of it, what's good for you. That's fine. If it's a GMO product or whatever, if there's no animal abuse, those are all tangible things you can easily verify. But if it's algorithms and stuff like that, it shouldn't be for all. It's recommended, like I'm just saying, it could be confusing and misleading for people with health issues.
Yeah. I get you completely, and I've had tons of questions, but it is nice to know that it is scientifically supported. They have a whole advisory board that meets, and they've got researchers, and so anyway, like I said, I've sat in several meetings because I'm like, help me understand this again. Still a lot of questions though, or I think to the general public it might not make as much sense, but I do love the fact that it's science based and it's nutrition based as well. So.
Great stuff, Kristen. I did see one more question in here in the chat. Do you have any tips? Because in fact, several of us are going to a holiday party with our Northern Virginia chapter next week. So do you have any tips for eating out during the holidays or eating out in general?
Yeah. Oh goodness. I get this question a lot. So, it depends where you're going. I know it's always contingent upon like where you're going. Some restaurants I do tip my hat to because they've made it very visible with like calories. They have options where you can, instead of getting, an extra starch or something, you can swap out for more veggies. So it really just depends. So I would say there are some keywords that I tell people just be mindful of. So anytime you see the word breaded, fried, I'm trying to think of like some stuff off the top of my head. Why can't I think right now? Breaded, fried, it depends, like sauce, you see gravies, things like that. It can typically mean there's going to be a lot of fat, a lot of calories. You see words like grilled, broiled, baked, those are clear, sauteed. Those are typically consistent with leaner cooking techniques. When in doubt, you can always ask the server or ask somebody in the kitchen, how it's made. But I would say keep in mind, try to follow the plate method where you're getting in most veggies, lean protein, whole grains. I mean, I even talk to people about building a healthier Chipotle bowl, and you have those options at that restaurant, which I do appreciate. You got brown rice, which you can say, hey, lighter on the rice, more veggies. You got those, tons of veggies to choose from, whole grains, lean protein that you can get, hold the sour cream, maybe do more monounsaturated fats from the guacamole and stuff like that. So I'm just saying that it's kind of nice when you have a big selection like that, you can modify it. Most restaurants are pretty willing to accommodate that. So like I said, I don't have a good answer in terms of which restaurant you're going to. I would just say, look at the calories, or maybe if you can look at the menu ahead of time. I know that really helps me. When I know I'm going to a restaurant, I will pick what I'm going to order before I even get there, because then sometimes I'm there and I'll make compromise decisions, or I'll be like, well, and when in doubt, enjoy yourself, enjoy your time. We can focus on the days around that event, just how we could be better. But yeah, those would be my recommendations if you can.
Okay,
thanks,
everybody.
Kristen, you were amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate all the interaction. Yeah, thank you for all the great questions too. So if you have any other questions, what I'll do is I will throw my email in here.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. And if, any questions you might think of later on in the week, feel free to send me a line. But yeah, I appreciate this opportunity to meet you all, and I really enjoyed it. So I wish everybody a good, safe, healthy holiday season. And yeah, I would love to come back if you see fit, and we can have more discussions. So yeah, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But anyway, just want to say I would love to keep the interaction going. But thank you so much for a really enjoyable session.
All right, great. Thank you, Kristen.
Cool. You're welcome. Have a great evening. Take care, everybody.
Thanks
Bye.
so much, Kristen.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, that wraps everything up. We will see you all in December, okay?